So welcome everyone. My name is Stephanie Thomas. I'm a professor of supply chain management at the University of Arkansas. I'm also the executive director of the WISE program, and WISE stands for Women Impacting Supply Chain Excellence. It's a student organization that started at the University of Arkansas and has kind of spread beyond that and is focused on increasing gender balance in supply chain. As we know, there is continued need for more talent going into supply chain. So I know we have quite a few Razorbacks. Those are University of Arkansas students on here today. So I appreciate you giving some time on this Sunday afternoon. I think we are about at the halfway point through ISCEA's 24-hour day of supply chain sustainability content. So just to make sure all of you, especially you students, are understanding, ISCEA stands for International Supply Chain Education Alliance. It is an organization that has a lot of different certifications and stuff, and as it says, it's about education. And last year was the first year they did Supply Chain Sustainability Pledge Day. And it's to create awareness about sustainability in supply chains and encourage people to pledge to join that initiative in those programs. And so that's the purpose of this point today. So it started 12 hours ago, and we'll be continuing for the next 12 hours so that there's an entire day of supply chain sustainability content that moves in 2-hour sections around the world. So we are grateful that the University of Arkansas, the WISE program in particular, was asked to host a 2-hour session as part of this. And so as part of that, I reached out and asked if there were any students that would be interested in helping me plan this event. And so that's where Halley, Crommett, and I have been partnering to plan this, and Halley's going to jump in a second. But I know a number of students at our university are starting to do sustainability minors and pursue more education specifically focused on sustainability. And I know there are more universities that are making that more a part of educational opportunities, which I think is great and fits in with what ISCEA is trying to do with this event. And a little bit later in our session, we're going to talk about one of their certification programs. So if you're a student interested in sustainability and supply chain, you might want to consider looking to that program. And so I'll tease you a little bit of information about that later. So I'm going to kick it over now to Halley and let her tell you what we're going to be doing for the next couple hours, and then introduce our first guest.
Hi everyone, my name is Sheri R. I am a senior supply chain and sustainability student at the University of Arkansas. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our agenda for this program. We're going to start things off by hearing from a panel of Walmart sustainability directors, and it's going to be an interactive discussion. So please leave any comments or questions in the chat and we'll make sure to ask them. After that, we're going to learn about sustainability at Sam's Club. And we're going to learn about what the sourcing process looks like for their private brands seafood supply chain. And then to finish things off, we're going to hear from Sheri Hinish, who is also known as the supply chain queen. And she's the head global sustainability lead for IBM's consulting services. And she is going to talk to us about what we can do as individuals to help supply chains become more sustainable. So to start things off, I am pleased to introduce our wonderful panelists, Marco Ugarte, Joe Daniels, and Hannah Schaefer. They are all sustainability directors at Walmart. To kick things off, we'd love to hear a little bit about your journey into the sustainability space. Marco, would you mind starting us off?
Hi, Haley. Thank you so much for the introduction. We're very pleased to join you today. And just as our global audience join us for this second half of the day, we appreciate the opportunity of speaking. I will, in fact, kick it back to my peer, Hannah, to start us off in terms of intro. Hannah.
Good morning, everybody. Nice to see everybody's smiling faces on a Sunday. It's rainy here in Bentonville. Hannah Schaefer, Director of Sustainability in Walmart Supply Chain. I joined the company about 9 months ago. But prior to that, I would say the journey started in college at university. I went to Colorado State University, and I was actually going to be a medical major. I wanted to be a doctor for a very long time. And then I actually took a sociology of water course as kind of one of my, I guess, basic classes, just as an elective because it sounded interesting. And after taking that course, I was just fascinated with the interactions that people have around things that we need to sustain for, Earth and everybody to function. So I kind of switched gears about 2.5 years in. And after working in a chem lab, I decided, nope, I want to be around people. So went the way of sociology, graduated from there in 2012, and then decided to let's look at trash, recycling, and compost. So I spent 9 years on the commercial side of composting, recycling, and trash pickup, and then made my way to Walmart. So that's a little bit background on me. Over to Joe.
Thanks, Hannah. Hi, everyone. I'm Joe Daniels. I am on Walmart Supply Chain Sustainability team. My journey here is rather interesting. I went to school to be a structural design engineer. And so I got my doctorate degree from the University of Arkansas in civil engineering with a focus in structures. My dissertation project was airfield heated pavement system using solar energy. And so I had a nice blend of solar green technology to solve a civil engineering type of problem. And so I went into a firm to do structural design engineering, but I realized that that wasn't my ministry. And I was being called back to the space of trying to serve community through sustainability. And so I'm happy to be with Walmart. On the team, I'm working on our emission reduction strategy for supply chain, as well as how do we get back into the community and have a community focus in all that we do from a decision-making standpoint. So from there, I'll pause there and pass it over to Marco.
Thank you, Joe. Hi, everybody. This is Marco Ugarte. I am an industrial engineer by training, originally from Mexico, and had an opportunity to join back then what it was known as the one of the first schools of sustainability in the United States at Arizona State. They were essentially putting together a program that would take talent from different fields, different backgrounds, and then set almost like a pilot cohort to do research in areas that intersect many traditional fields. Certainly there were for many years, in fact, in environmental engineering, environmental management, they were very well long established programs and degrees for that matter. But the fact that sustainability was starting this journey of being recognized as a discipline, as a line of research or inquiry for other researchers or even companies to start looking into that aspect of their operations to provide the opportunity to all these programs. As of 5 years ago, that kind of seminal schools, now there are at least 750 different official schools of sustainability around the world, regardless of programs in masters, executive masters, bachelor's, minors, and of course, terminal degrees. So my journey has been, or provided me the opportunity to go to different industries. Initially, a lot of water stewardship. So it's not everything around energy and carbon. There are different companies and different organizations that, for lack of a better term, their functional unit or almost the metric or the currency they use sometimes is water or gallons of water or liters of water. So I was involved with the production process of different ingredients, different beverages. And even those companies had, of course, they needed to have a very good understanding of what are the challenges that we are now facing today. Then that journey took me into a little bit of more general consulting into supply chain. And then eventually I joined the transportation arm of Amazon when the company was going into an expansion mode and things, global pledges and global goals were established. And then over the last year or so, when we are expanding our team, I had the opportunity to join Walmart and support them in this journey. So certainly very happy to be here. And thank you, Stephanie, for having us.
Well, I appreciate you guys giving your time on this Sunday afternoon. And I think the thing we want to kind of start the conversation off with is I feel like a lot of times when we talk about sustainability, if you think manufacturing or you think transportation or something, you kind of get some of the things of what that might mean to certain companies. You know, Walmart's a retailer. You know, you don't make anything. I'd say you transport some stuff or whatever, but what does sustainability mean to Walmart? What are the goals that Walmart is pursuing that you want, and a lot of us on this call are Walmart consumers, that you want your customers to know when they walk in the store and make a decision to buy products from you?
So Dr. Thomas, I'll take that one first. And we have prepared something written a while ago. And so it speaks very well to the question that you're asking. And so I want to read it, you know, word for word, but I also want to speak on it outside of, you know, actually having a scripted talk. But I think it's very good just to kind of read this and then discuss afterwards. So it says it's imperative that we put the well-being, preservation and prosperity of our people, nature, and climate at the forefront of everything that we at Walmart do, from the decisions we make to the communities we serve. We are on the path to becoming a regenerative company. Regenerative meaning restoring, renewing, and replenishing in addition to conserving. It means decarbonizing operations and eliminating waste along the product chain. And so we understand that our footprint, just in terms of our assets, we're in Marco, please correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but we're what, 10 miles from 90+% of the population in the United States. And so we understand that we have a large reach, we have a large touch. And in that, like you're saying, we at Walmart, we're not just employees of Walmart, we're also customers of Walmart too. So how are we thinking about serving our community, thinking about serving nature, thinking about serving the environment in the decisions that we make? So Marco and Hannah, if you have anything to add to that, please do.
Thank you, Joe. I would add that the definition and the term regeneration, of course, it comes more from natural conservation as a more traditional concept. Now, as many of the participants, and as it has been explained during the program earlier, there are companies that are looking into better understand the components, the whole life cycle of a product, or potentially conduct the same for a service. And that, in many cases, has allowed now what companies are subscribing to in developing science-based targets, or having essentially data-driven objectives, a better understanding. So initially, when an aspirational goal like landfill-free or zero waste to landfill was out there, it was the direction or the overall destination. But getting there and being able to track the steps and progress into that is what really calls back all the disciplines involved, all the data and the science and the ability to collect and the discipline to have good data or high quality data along the process. So when we take something like a science-based target, and then the organization has different goals depending on the focus, there are goals on reducing waste, there are goals on reducing emissions, and these emissions can come from different places, including our fleet, the different buildings that we operate, the temperature control buildings that are part of that organization and that network. And in that sense, many companies, when we step back, not only beyond organizations that some do have a regional or a global footprint, there are also countries and regions that have set for themselves carbon neutrality goals. So certainly the Paris Accord is one of the most prominent, and then that target is by 2050. Now, some other companies start looking into the opportunity to accelerate that path. So now we have a number of companies and even country level goals that are looking into carbon neutrality, or at least the neutralization of carbon emissions via different technologies, including potentially carbon capture of those that are trying to reach that same goal of neutrality by 2040. All of those goals are already, even by 2050, significant goals and very ambitious goals. So when an organization takes a concept like regeneration and tries to go beyond neutrality, tries to go net positive, that brings a set of complete new challenges. And as we go in our conversation, we would potentially, you know, touch the basis on, well, even if a country or a process or a region talks about ways or pathways to achieve neutrality, what is the role that an offset plays on that? And I think that again, those are interesting propositions because, as it was mentioned a moment ago at the beginning, both the financial, the environmental, and then of course the social sustainability of any enterprise, all of them are intertwined. It's going to be very difficult to really try to improve in one without affecting the others. So I would offer that as also a point of, a starting point of our conversation.
Thanks, Marco and Joe. So I have a question that's come in from Karen that had asked, is sustainability part of the Walmart operational audits?
So I don't know necessarily if I would label it as operational audits, but sustainability and regeneration is definitely on the forefront of what Walmart stands for. As Joe had mentioned, it's, you know, in 2020, you know, our CEO, Doug McMillan, basically said, we want to be a regenerative company. We got to think about people, we got to think about nature, and we want to leave the world a better place than when we got here. It's essentially what we're trying to do. And I think that also speaks volumes to the story that I think we're trying to weave, that as we become regenerative, we think about people, and Marco had talked about science-based targets and really being thoughtful about what we're doing. It also means that we're out there trying to share the story of what we're doing, because we have to make sure that what we're doing, we have to speak to the impact that it has, because we need everybody's help in getting there, because we do reach a lot of people. So I will give a shameless plug for walmart.com/sustainability, actually lists out and talks about some of our progress, what we're trying to do, and gives those little nuggets of stories that talks about the amazing chain from purchase to, you know, all the way back to where did it come from? How was it sourced? So definitely check that out.
I would add to Karen's, and thank you for that question, and also to, into Hannah's definition that in general terms, both quality and then of course optimization and again other traditional fields of practice have always been close to sustainability, and that's also why the debate was so heated at why or why should sustainability exist as a separate discipline if it's the conversion or the point of contact between other traditional fields. And the reality, especially when we take this element of an operational audit, the fact that a process is being understood or break down in their different components, establish perhaps identify all the opportunities for a potential defect in a process, in a service, all that quality treatment of that process, understanding that voice of the customer, and then integrated it back to the design of a product, of a service. They were initially understood as just traditional quality tools that in the process of implementing them make the process better, they optimize some resources, and therefore the opportunity to reduce waste or quantify either financially or operationally were evident. So one of the initial quick wins, if you will, of sustainability is that the operational field was an excellent candidate as a place to start, because everything we do as companies requires energy, produces some level of waste, and even I remember in one of the beverage companies that I used to work for, one of their founders used to say that waste is a resource, a misplaced resource. So there should be any waste. It's just a resource that we haven't found a way to loop it back in or find a second life on that resource. So I think that while the concept or the spirit was there, and making it official, putting an official tag, having a specific metric is an important aspect, and that opens, of course, now the big challenge for everybody. Even though the companies now have sustainability teams or goals, or they realize the importance of weather and climate into the operation of a company, the supply of components, the supply of ingredients, the ability to be able to take, let's say, a traditional metric like how many boxes go through a particular section of your supply chain, that throughput, that efficiency is aided by, well, what is the length of that? How much time is saved? Do you need some level of technology to do that? Do you need to sort that manually, or could you inspect that manually in a different way? So there are a lot of things that, of course, for me as an industrial engineer, all of those were extensions of industrial engineering, right? We're just measuring them in a different way. We're measuring them in kilowatt hours or in megajoules if there is energy or work involved, or we are measuring them in tons or kilograms of different materials as we go. So I would say that while audit is really a more strong concept, if you will, just the design of a process and keeping track of it, looking at the deviation, improving the process, always benefits from a general discipline like sustainability.
So Marco, you made a comment a few minutes ago. You were saying something. And you're like, there was a wink, wink part of it, or whatever. That brings me to what are some common misconceptions around sustainability? Because a lot of times people are like, oh yeah, I know what sustainability is. It's like I recycle, so I'm sustainable. What are some conceptions, and maybe that's misconceptions of stuff that you deal with internally as part of the sustainability team, or just what you feel are the big misconceptions, out in the rest of the world?
I would start with a comment and certainly invite Joe and Hannah to provide additional perspective. I think one of the elements is that because sustainability tends to be immediately associated just with one of the facets, that is usually the environmental one. I mean, it's useful and it's a great opportunity to start the conversation because of some of the examples that we mentioned before, that a product, even if everybody at home has a favorite article or even a service that you use very often, and then you think about all the different pieces and components to go into that product or the activities that lead to that service that you enjoy so much, then you realize that, hey, there is a whole value chain behind that experience or behind that product that I really like. And one of them is to just overlook perhaps or not treat at the same level in the environmental attributes of a product or service with the social and then the financial elements of a service. And one example of this is always, if you were to take a particular product that is not only able to deliver and create jobs for a particular community, but then deliver a financial stream to get that company moving. Especially when a company is starting, they need to understand that, and sometimes they call it that triple bottom line, because it's the ability to positively influence the financial performance of that company, and then of course what are the implications to the community and certainly into the environment. Now the community piece comes with higher complexity, because people tend to think like, well, the environmental and all that. Well, for all that, and especially financials, there has been already a lot of metrics and a lot of work and a lot of content about how to go about or how to measure the financial impact or the environmental input. But when it comes to social, it is not only raw data. This is really the communities. Of course, communities and attributes can be eventually transformed into also metrics. But those metrics are not collected or understood in the same way as for example, just a system that inspects packages. It's a package or a box in the right shape, or no, it's damaged, something happened to it. So that is almost like a binary inspection of a yes or no. When you are really surveying a community about, let's say, their perception of a technology or their inclination to use a different service, or even the implication of having now a company moving in technology or expanding their reach into that very community, there are going to be implications like noise or traffic or rezoning, and that has an impact into the community. That has an impact in the real estate valuation, in the properties. It becomes also more competitive to get access to the traditional services, because now not only they serve a community, but now they serve almost like a semi-industrial entity. So I think that that makes a richer scope, both just to even in setting up or thinking about setting up a new business, but then also understanding, regardless of the size of your organization, what opportunities are they into the community and the market that you are serving.
So I have a question. As a student, I'm curious that for people that are still in school, or if they're coming from a background where they haven't gotten a chance to work with sustainability much in their day-to-day work, what type of skills or experiences should we pursue so we can qualify to work in the sustainability field?
Clearly, I don't think there's one right answer. You've heard from Marco, Joe, and myself that we all kind of weaved slightly differently, and maybe there was like a tinge of it in the back of our head, but it wasn't like I'm going to go be in supply chain sustainability and that's where I'm getting my degree. It's kind of like, I think you have to first identify that you're passionate about sustainability and wanting to do that. And I think if you thread that into your mindset of what you might be looking at, I think is going to make a big difference.
To add on to that, Halley, I think it's a lens that you have to look through regardless of what industry you get yourself into. There's so many opportunities to begin weaving in the way you make decisions, the types of projects you work on. And I'm coming from an engineering background, right? So if you're thinking about it as I'm working in transportation, there's several different things that you could be getting involved in that have sustainability metrics that you can begin looking at. I think the biggest thing, though, is just understanding how to make those decisions, right? I think a gentleman before we started talking, I mean, it's a financial thing as well, right? So you're getting in and it becomes, well, I can make this decision or I can have this alternative, but there may be a financial trade-off in order for us to get a big sustainability win. And so just to direct it back to your question, I didn't enter into studying civil engineering to work in sustainability. I was very passionate about working in civil engineering, but then we got to working in concrete, and you start looking at, well, just the production of cement has such a large CO2 production or footprint. And like, how do you begin doing research where you're using more fly ash? You're using a byproduct that can kind of cut down on some of those things. So you kind of weave in sustainability. If it's a mindset, if you're able to adopt the mindset, it's applicable to whatever industry you get into.
So Joe, I want to build on Halley's comment, because I think this is a question a lot of students have, say, oh, that sounds cool to work in sustainability, but like, what do you do on a daily basis type of thing? So, what does the average day or week look like, kind of, because I think there's a curiosity of, hey, I'm going to go tell my parents I want to go work in this. And are you going to be able to, support yourself, or is that something you can even do? So educate us a little bit on what do you guys do every day?
Well, I mean, I can start. So I'm working on our emission reduction strategy, like for all the supply chain, right? So that's focusing mainly on our transportation fleet as well as our supply chain building. So our distribution centers, our fulfillment centers. And so I'm working with teams who are very intimate with the work on decarbonizing our fleet. How are we looking to get rid of our vehicle assets that use diesel and begin on a long runway to begin using zero emission vehicles? So I'm working with those teams. And there's a lot of complexity in that, right? There's policy, there's infrastructure, there's cost, there's TCO, right? So we're the total cost of ownership, right? So working with the various teams to develop what are the different roadmaps that we need to have in our grocery network, in our ambient network, in our fulfillment centers, to get to our ultimate goal by 2040, at least in our U.S. market. And so those are the things that I work on a day-to-day basis.
I would add, and piggybacking both Joe's input and Halley's question, that now we are in a more mature market in terms of sustainability teams or roles or goals across companies. When I went out of that program, there was not really like a field. There were just essentially two camps. They have evolved, and this will connect back to what Joe just described. So I mean, my research was on carbon footprint of things. Is what is the carbon footprint of a gallon of milk versus a carbon footprint of a laptop? Complete different products by design, by componentry, by value chain, but both of them had an energy component, a temperature control in one case, another one has an extraction of materials, and of course another one kind of flows into the consumer, and the other one, if decommissioned rightly, there is a whole other reverse or second life that happens to that same technology. So in the environmental health and safety field, very close to production and business, they were almost like the ideal family of professionals to almost tag along this kind of new thing, weird thing called sustainability. And so they were almost, you know, it's almost when people say, well, this kind of was assigned to me, we weren't really asking for any of this. So we knew that this was an opportunity, but it didn't have a name. So on one side, you have the environmental health and safety professionals and sustainability now. And then on the other side, closer to business, is exactly what Joe is mentioning, the whole policy side, the whole legal aspect of it, even just a traditional industrial complex, or everything, all the different audits and certification you need to have to be operating, to have the right to operate a facility like that, the level of audits, how do you take care of everything, the infrastructure, the pipeline, access, permitting, all that already exists many, many years ago. But so then the other family of ideal professionals to carry kind of another chunk of this sustainability flavor were the legal professionals. But the reality is that, or what I still believe that is one of the best value aspects of the sustainability field as a whole, is that regardless of your training, you can always contribute to that. When I joined the program, we had people coming from marketing, from finance, different fields of engineering. We have actually one of our peers, they came from one of the schools of divinity with a degree in theology. All of that, especially when you think about sustainability from the social, from the economic and environmental, all of them have a place in there. So I would kind of close that doesn't, especially when you are in a search, if the company has a team or their role happens to say sustainability, then great, because we now, 12 years later, we're in a better market, we're in a more mature market. But even if the company doesn't have a team or the role doesn't say in the title or anywhere in the description, that is when, reading actually that description or reading the general report or the website of the company makes a lot of sense, because then you can tell from the company, from what they do, how they speak about their process, how they essentially understand their role in the larger world, in their community, locally, in their market. But most importantly, back to the passion aspect, if you have the passion for that, it doesn't matter the role or your training. Wherever you go, you will bring that passion with you. And that in many ways are almost even more successful, because when you enter to a place where the rules are already set, the teams and the lines are already drawn, then you come in and to contribute, very good into an already existing organization. But when you are the person that in fact brings that passion and that energy, it doesn't matter if you are a traditional project manager or you are closer to data science, that plus your passion, plus your drive will essentially open that road for the company. And again, in many cases, that is really what happens, that you find a champion inside the company that has the passion and the will, and then that person essentially starts the process inside a company. So I would say, don't wait for a role to say sustainability or a company to have a sustainability team. You can always be that seed, but you just need to start it.
I love that idea that we can all be seeds and plant it wherever you are and kind of make a difference. We're coming to the end of the time for you guys. So kind of what does the future related to supply chain sustainability look like? Where do you think we're headed? What do you think is coming down in the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 50, 100 years?
One word: technology.
Expand on that a little bit, Hannah.
I think that we've done a lot of great work, but I feel like if we need to get faster, to meet our goals and things like the Paris Agreement, technology is going to be able to enable our goals and kind of what we want to do in the world. So technology, I think, is going to play a very, very large role within sustainability as a whole.
I would add to that and also say there's multiple scenarios, but it depends on buy-in and how the government is going to support, at least here in the US, all the different initiatives. I mean, there's different scenarios of if we get full government support, what things can look like over the next between now and 2050. And then if they don't support, what that looks like as well. And so it's really just, how are these different efforts being supported by taxpayer dollars? But how are we in supply chain sustainability? Fail fast, go fast, move fast, and figure out, how do we be innovative? And like Hannah said, be able to implement technology to move us forward.
And I would close that, while we all have as either companies, teams, or individuals, plans of different length with different horizons, I think that it's very evident that everything we do today, anywhere we are, any role we play, it's important, and that can really make a difference. Globally speaking, we understand that we have a big challenge at the door. There is not only climate challenges of big magnitude, but also we have the conflict in one part of the world. This notion of the climate refugee that initially was a concept is now a complete reality. So all those different impacts in different regions are things to consider. So I would say that while the technology will eventually, help us out, or we need to work harder into getting that technology faster to a solution or to a place to improve things, I think in the meantime we can all do something about it. And that small thing could be just, again, from how we go about our daily lives. What are the selections that we have when we in fact get, a product or a service, whatever that be. And I think that is that number, that collective action is what in the meantime will help us to keep moving and keep progressing. But I certainly see that the fact that the challenges are big won't need to discourage us of the opportunity we have in solving them, starting every day. So no need to wait for this or that. I think that on the contrary, the fact that we have an audience today and they are listening or learning about this, or they have a passion to it, already tells us and gives us a good indication that there is a good opportunity here. So we really appreciate the opportunity of joining you today.
Thank you, Marco, Joe, and Hannah. Appreciate your time today and your thoughts. If some of you are students, they're all three on LinkedIn. I strongly encourage you to reach out and connect with them. And if this is a passion or an area of interest to you, offer to grab a cup of coffee sometime or something and talk about what opportunities may be available. So thank you, Joe, Hannah, and Marco. Appreciate it so much. So now we're going to switch gears and we are going to learn a little bit about what Sam's Club has been doing related to specifically their private label brand Members Mark, and within that specifically looking at their seafood. And so they prepared a video for us that I'm going to pull up now for you.
Hi, my name is Megan Formwalt.
Hi, my name is Halley Crommett,
I currently serve as the president for WISE.
and I am the sustainability lead for the ISCEA's Supply Chain Sustainability Pledge Day.
So WISE stands for Women Impacting Supply Chain Excellence, and the goal really is basically to help uplift women, specifically in supply chain management, but it's not just about women as well. We are full of women and men in our organization, but the goal really is to just kind of network between peers and with industry partners across the Northwest Arkansas area. So our help from our industry partners is really big for all of our students because supply chain is such a broad area and there's so much you can do, and every student that we have in supply chain has a different passion. So getting to hear from so many industry leaders that come in and show us what they're passionate about really helps us kind of decide that where we want to go in supply chain, and they do their best that they can to help us get there.
Coming up next, we'll be hearing about what sustainability looks like in Sam's Club supply chain and hear about their sustainable seafood sourcing process.
Members Mark is on a journey to become a purpose-driven brand, to leave a positive impact on people and the planet. And we'll live up to this pledge by doing what we do best, creating products our members love. We'll bring the highest quality, delightful innovation, and purposeful regeneration to the brand, with a focus on benefiting people, climate, and nature while reducing waste. We have some ambitious goals, and we're out to meet them all by 2025. We're investing in communities with fair trade certified products like our coffee, sourced directly from producers and co-ops that improve the standard of living for growers and their families. We're committed to sustainability by working with partners that share the same goal, like our fisheries that sustainably source salmon to help ensure long-term ocean health. We're supporting the use of responsible and efficient use of resources. In 2021 alone, an estimated 575 million gallons of water were saved thanks to our sourcing of better cotton. And we're reducing waste by ensuring all of our packaging is recyclable, reusable, or compostable. All by 2025. Basically, it comes down to this. If our products aren't great for our members and the planet, they're not good enough. We have some amazing products already, but in the future, we'll become a brand our members can't stop talking about. A brand that inspires members to renew every year, with products they can't live without. We've already started on this journey by committing to a member-obsessed culture, by co-creating with nearly 40,000 members to develop products they can rely on. And we're not stopping until we reach our goals, even as they continue to evolve. And when we reach them, we'll keep pushing. We'll all become advocates for Members Mark and show our members that our products are the reason they won't shop anywhere else. Are you in? Thought so. Members Mark, made with our member and planet in mind.
Hi everyone, I'm Pratibha Rajshekhar and I serve as Senior Vice President for Sourcing and Private Brands here at Sam's Club. In 2020, Doug McMillon, CEO of Walmart Inc., committed Walmart to becoming a regenerative company, which means placing nature and humanity at the center of our business practices. This marks the next phase of our sustainability journey that began over 16 years earlier after Hurricane Katrina. Back then, Walmart made several ambitious pledges around sustainability, and while the company didn't have the exact roadmap on how we deliver on those, through curiosity and innovative thinking, we found the right solutions. We also know, though, that as climate change becomes a crisis, it's important that we move faster to execute and scale solutions in response. We know that our natural systems are changing and that humanity is doing irreversible damage to our planet. We also know that this isn't just a Walmart, a private brand, or global sourcing problem, but a challenge for the entire human race. And we must all do what we can. It's imperative that we make a difference. Back in 2020, Doug noted that making the necessary change to protect our planet will take each of us. His words were a call to action. And I encourage you all to watch this 15-minute video on how Walmart Inc. is focused on climate, nature, waste, and people in the supply chain. This commitment guided Sam's Club to get to work to evolve our Members Mark private brand to become a purpose-driven brand that focuses on regeneration, quality, and innovation. To say that we were inspired by Walmart Inc.'s goals is an understatement. We began to think about the role of our Members Mark brand and what we could play in achieving these solutions. As we looked at our opportunity, we noticed many of our highly rated Members Mark items have sustainability attributes, like our Fair Trade Certified Members Mark Colombian Supremo Whole Bean Coffee. So we decided to dive in and understand how we can continue to evolve Members Mark items in ways that are more regenerative, well beyond sustainability. How could we make this brand one that serves people, our climate, and nature while reducing waste? How could we make sure our efforts were not just about conserving precious natural resources, but also working hard to restore, renew, and replenish the planet while encouraging others to do the same? We worked behind the scenes with Walmart's Global Responsibility team and with external partners to shape our ambitious goals around pursuing our journey to become a regenerative private brand. This means we aim to prevent harm and improve outcomes for the planet. That's why we recently introduced a set of industry-leading sustainability goals that we aim to achieve for all of Members Mark items by 2025. Just like our colleagues at Walmart, we know we don't have all the solutions plotted out today. But that doesn't mean we can't find solutions tomorrow to help us achieve our goals along this journey to becoming a regenerative brand. A list of these aspirations can be found on Members Mark website, but I want to give you a few examples. And those include our goals to offer 100% cage-free eggs and egg products, to source 100% of our seafood from fisheries that meet certifications approved by GSSI, and source 100% of our Members Mark coffee, tea, and cocoa products from suppliers that are Fair Trade certified. But beyond achieving these milestones, we are philosophically changing the way we approach Members Mark item innovation. This is incredibly important when thinking about supply chain, as it must start with educating our supply chain partners on our aspirations, expectations, and timelines. First, we are striving to boost the number of items that are made using practices that promote animal welfare, help support land and ocean health, mitigate deforestation, utilize more sustainable textiles, and source from renewable resources. In tandem with Walmart's corporate focus on climate, we are also actively looking at ways to decrease our emissions footprint. One way we'll do this is by calling for all suppliers of Members Mark items to participate in Project Gigaton, which is an initiative announced by Walmart in April 2017 that aims to reduce or avoid 1 billion metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions from the global value chain. As we look to reduce waste, we aim to incorporate more recyclable, reusable, and industrially compostable components in both our items and our packaging. And with people in the supply chain, we aim to continue to source responsibly and create inclusive economic opportunities by seeking diverse suppliers over the years. We intend to integrate a regenerative mindset into our day-to-day processes so that eventually it is our aspiration that guides how our team engages with our suppliers. But we can't do it alone. We look for ways to bring our suppliers along this journey through webinars and trainings. Sustainability and protecting our planet are not one person, a company, or team's responsibility. It's everyone's responsibility, from the day-to-day actions or recycling to developing more sustainable supply chain processes and innovations. I am thrilled to know that we have eager, brilliant minds like yours ready to help the retail world on this journey to address the climate crisis. And we need all of you. It's up to all of us to make our mark on a better future for our planet. I'd like to now invite you to check out the Members Mark Manifesto. I'm sure you'll be inspired. A video that shares with you what we want our brand to become and what we hope to accomplish for our members and the planet.
Behind every Members Mark product is a world of good. Where your morning cup of Colombian coffee is Fair Trade certified. That means fair wages and safe working environments for the farmers and communities who grow it. where we bring you fresh Members Mark salmon and do our part to help protect and preserve the oceans for generations to come. Where nearly 20% of the energy used to create the fabrics in our baby collection comes from the wind. Because we're all in on the future. And we work with thousands of Sam's Club members like you to help us develop the Members Mark products you love. And you can find them only at Sam's Club. Members Mark, made with our member and planet in mind.
Next up, our team will talk to you about how we source GSSI certified seafood. An example would be salmon.
I'm Dan Underkoffler.
I'm Jesse Collins.
I'm Maggie Chang.
I'm the Senior Merchant for Seafood at Sam's Club.
I'm the Director of Product Development Sourcing for the Meat and Seafood team here at Sam's Club.
And I am Director of Initiatives and Implementation for Private Brand. I lead all regeneration initiatives. Most people are familiar with what sustainability means, and I believe most of the people and our members are really passionate about sustainability. And today you will hear a lot about, how we take sustainability in terms of designing and sourcing our seafood product from Dan and Jesse today. But regeneration is really our commitment to go above and beyond just become sustainable, right? So when we are talking about how we make our seafood sustainable, we take a step further of making sure that we're also regenerating. Regeneration means that we're restoring, we're replenishing. When we're talking about a marine ecosystem, it's not all about how we're sourcing it sustainably, but also, how we make sure that, we continue to leave the healthy population in the seafoods world, that we can continue to regenerate for the future populations to come. And then additionally, people is a huge factor in regeneration as well. How do we take care of the people in our supply chain?
We really start at the ground level. We work directly with our farms. We work directly with the processors that work directly with the farms. And we're trying to find those that really follow a lot of the different sustainability practices that come along with seafood sustainability. Whether it's monitoring the fish is actually in the ponds, whether it's how we manage the feed process through the supply chain. There's many different steps that go along with how we look at suppliers. We're really looking for those that are forward thinking. Seafood sustainability has been around since really the early 2000s, and it's evolved over the last 20 years to where it is now. And like Maggie said, it's more than just sustainability. It's about regeneration. Seafood is, other different commodities in seafood, planting mangroves, different things that go on there. There's a lot of things that go along with regeneration, but really it is about how do we leave the ocean for future generations to come.
Yeah, and I think to add to that is working with our suppliers on very tight specifications, which leads to very high quality products. And then the quality of those products lead to, the member being satisfied and understanding why we go through all these parameters to make sure we meet our sustainability and regeneration goals. I think the main thing when I think of regeneration is, really focusing on finding the right supplier to work with, and then working with that supplier to know there's a long-term future, and it isn't just, hey, in the short term we need some seafood. We need to work with them long-term so they can not only build their business, but also help us build our business that will be a return for years and years to come. So we'll always have that supply of the high-quality seafood.
Yeah, and I think to even go deeper in that, it's animal welfare plays a huge role in this. I mean, Maggie touched on, like people, like social welfare for associates, employees of these companies, but it's really about animal welfare also. So whether it's, we have an item where there's no antibiotics used in our salmon. That is, animal welfare in the seafood supply chain is huge because we want to work with partners who really care about the animals that are in the ponds that are being processed through the supply chain. And those that have the standards to keep a supply chain that way, it's paramount in what we do here at Sam's. there's a lot of work behind the scenes going on within that to make the feed even more sustainable, because of all the process, that is the one key that you have to understand, you have to work with, right? So we continue to work with our partners there, but then from that point, it's the animal welfare. So the environment that the fish are grown in, okay, is it, whether you have to worry about algae bloom, you have to worry about different predators like, birds that want to come in. So whether it's the nets being used to kind of protect the ponds, myself, I worry about climate change, because if you look at the water temperatures, salmon love to be grown in very cold waters, okay? So you take a place like Norway, it's very cold, icy waters there. So Chile is the same way, but again, as climate changes and the water heats up, that's where you have to worry about things like algae bloom and other issues in the water. So there's all these different factors that go into how do we grow a salmon in an environment that is conducive to growing healthy fish.
Kind of like Dan mentioned earlier too, is graze management and feed management, because everything we're trying to do around animals and animal welfare is all about feeding them correctly. So making sure that we're working on the not only sustainability for the animal itself or the seafood itself, is the product around it that we feed it, right? It all has to be sustainable.
Yeah.
So.
Then even the process to get the salmon from the pens to where we process, that's another step where you have to worry about different diseases and different things that happen to the salmon in the process. So again, we work so closely with our processing partners to move the fish in a manner that doesn't stress them out, that is, it's very protective of the fish. And then in a processing facility where we go through and we monitor how the salmon are treated in that process is a whole other thing. But it's, we're very involved from the beginning to the end, where we actually put it into our tray that is actually sold to our members. There's not many retailers in the country that can say that they're as involved in the steps as what we are. And that's, with Jesse and his team, making sure that our specifications are upheld, our sustainability standards are upheld the whole way. It's, like I said, I could spend hours going through how this whole process works, and, but it's a very intricate process.
One thing we talked about when we talk about regeneration is also the social aspect, right? And the guys that are doing all the things you just talked about, the guys that are, the employees that are working there in the ponds every day, the employees that are working at the processing facilities, are they being paid correct wages? Are they being treated fairly? And we do work with a lot of overseas companies, and we got to make sure that they fall under all these same goals that we have, not only as an umbrella of Walmart, but also as our goals within Sam's Club and our Members Mark program.
Yep.
Yeah, Jesse, let's talk a little bit more about our wild caught. I think it will also be a really good conversation in terms of, the way that they're talking about farming and ponds is because our salmon program is farm raised, but they also deal with a lot of wild caught products. Let's talk about what that means in terms of sustainability supply chain.
Yeah, within our wild caught programs, we actually follow the same detail. We work with certification bodies like Global Seafood Sustainability Initiative, and we follow a lot of the programs around our MSC, ASE, all those things that are specific towards maybe more wild caught than farm raised. Our overall percent salmon is definitely more farm raised, but we do have the wild caught aspect, and we work with those guys just like we would do our farms. Yeah. We make sure that from the fish itself, how it's fished, how it's harvested, how it goes through the process to get to us, and a high quality manner to where we can pass that along to the member.
Yeah.
Specifically to salmon, when you look at a lot of the wild fisheries within the United States waters, our federal government manages a lot of the resources, right? So there's folks from NOAA Fisheries. It's all over the place, whether it's the salmon, whether it's scallops. Those are probably or lobsters. Those are the three biggest ones here in the United States. But salmon specifically, the fishery in conjunction with NOAA, they created their own kind of sustainability program, the Alaska Responsible Fishery Management Program. And if you ever get a chance to watch any videos on how they view like wild salmon in general, it's a very scientific program. And you got to figure, you know, these fish, they're born in these tributaries in Alaska, and then after they're born, they swim out to sea, and they're only offshore about 10 or 15 miles, but then they come back to spawn back where they hatched. So it's something, you know, it's all part of their genetics. Like they remember where they were born. They swim back there, and the government, there's guys actually sitting on the sides of the riverbeds counting the salmon as they go back upriver, because if they don't get enough to go back upstream, then they won't open the fishery. So there's all of these things that go into play that come down to how much fish actually gets harvested in Alaska. And again, if you ever get a chance to watch the videos or even go to Alaska and see this, it's a pretty amazing journey. And then just the boats and the gear that they use, it's not. This isn't just, you know, this isn't just people standing on the side of the river fishing, you know what I mean, with all this different types of stuff. I mean, the gear is very targeted to the resource that they're trying to catch, because in wild capture fisheries, bycatch is probably it's the biggest issue in sustainability.
Yeah.
What I focus on a lot is the actual development of the item. So when I talk about development of the item, it's that same experience every time a member buys our premium salmon, that they're going to understand that everything about it, from the claims associated, from the sustainability goals, from the product itself. So the cooking instructions, the overall flavor profile they get, the visual, it's all really just wrapping that all into one package. So that way, when they come up there and make a decision to spend money on this item, they understand that we've put a lot of thought and heart into it.
The three of us started about 5 years ago, and when we first started here, we had a good program, but we didn't have a great program. So one of the things we really dialed into is how do we get more concise with our supplier partners. So a lot of times in seafood, you have just a lot of different suppliers, and really we went through and we kind of cut out all the people in the middle, and we really dialed into those farms and those processing plants, whether it's in Chile or Norway or Iceland. We really dug deep into that supply chain, and we came up with what we wanted Members Mark to be 5 years ago. And I think seafood was really at the forefront of a lot of this. And to the point where today now we're going down the regeneration path, and how can we even accelerate something that's very good today, and how do we get it to the next level where it's, you know, what's going into our fish feed? How well is the genetics of our salmon? Is there ways to take, you know, even from a packaging standpoint, how do we take, whether it was in the past, you know, seafood, because it has to stay so cold, there's a lot of the styrofoam usage in the supply chain. We took all of our styrofoam usage out. So none of our salmon comes into our processing facility in styrofoam anymore. So it's those type of things that we've gone on this journey for the last 5 years, and it's the next 5 to 10 years to how do we get it even more better than what it is today.
So Members Mark is our only brand, only private brand in Sam's Club. And for Sam's Club, Members Mark is going to take lead, as we should, as we're the largest brand in our company. We should be taking lead in our regeneration in terms of whether it's seafood. We have many other initiatives that we're also going after in terms of, you know, how about forests, right? Like how are we going to preserve forests? How about pollinators? How about fibers? How about, you know, many other things that Members Mark play in almost every category in the club, and we need to set the best examples for ourselves and for our members. We need all our members to feel good every time they make a Members Mark purchase. It's good for the people and good for the planet, and that is the peace of mind they should have. They pay for their memberships to shop with us, and we are the brand that represents Sam's Club. We need to give them that peace of mind. If you think about Members Mark, I like to talk about this. You know, in the industry, retail industry, everybody is familiar with private label. a lot of the retailers start with private label, and so do we. Private label is all about how do we convert a product to a national brand equivalent, and then you put your brand on it, and then you give more value to your customers. Members Mark has also gone through that journey. Members Mark gone through from the private label days where, you know, it could be anything and just have our brand logo on top of it, to, you know, a couple of years ago, we really go after quality. We really go after innovation. We started to treat ourselves and want our members to see us as a brand. So we gone from private label to a private brand. And as we continue to make our journey, we also want to become a brand with purpose. And regeneration is where we're going to lean in. It's important for our members. It's important for our brand. And it's important for us to continue to have that advantage and be relevant in the next couple of years. So that's why regeneration is important. It's important that we lean in and become a purposeful brand, and that is regeneration.
Yeah, and just to add to Maggie's comment on regeneration is I think, just like she said, the quality aspect and what we've done to really, you know, gain ground above and beyond national brands is the reason we need regeneration, is because we need our suppliers to even go above and beyond what they're doing in their own brands or doing in other branded items. So that's really the ask there as far as regeneration in the future.
Like I said earlier, we take this so deep in our supply chain that we deliver the best value to the member through quality. Okay, it's you know, when you learn business, everyone talks about cost of goods and everything, and that's very important. But really, for our members, it's all about the quality, and especially in seafood. The way I've always viewed, you know. While I've worked here for 5 years, I came from another retailer 15, you know, for the last 15 years before that. And seafood can either be a great benefit to the private brands program, or it can be a detriment. Outside of canned tuna, salmon is one of the highest consumed fish species in seafood. So it is one of those things where you have to have it right. And when we have a great salmon program, which we do, we have our skinless salmon program is probably by far one of the best in the industry. Why? Because not only is it antibiotic free, it's skinless, it's also sashimi grade, like you would go to a sushi restaurant and get. You know, we can trace it all the way back to where, you know, to where the original egg was hatched, and we can trace it all the way through our supply chain. So we know and we completely understand what has gone on in the process. And that is how we deliver such a value to our members. Because when it comes to our salmon, we do have one of the best values in the market on our whole salmon program. And it's through the work of Members Mark, it's through the work of our product development team and our supplier partners. It's a group effort that gets us to where we are today.
Yeah, I think, Dan, you touched on it perfectly, because, you know, if you think about in our company structure, we have a lot of Dans as the merchants that they're negotiating with the suppliers fiercely to make sure that we are delivering our value every day, making sure we have the right suppliers lined up, we're making sure that we have the best value to our members. And then you have Jesse and his counterparts that are working to make sure the specs is right? There's a lot that goes into creating a product, developing a product from specs perspective, from quality standard perspective, from food safety, or even you do a lot of the value-added flavors. How do we make sure, you know, the value-added or the prepared food standpoint that we have the best eating experience for our members through the work that our teams all work together with our supplier partners? That's exactly how our members will benefit, right? We are putting in the works. We're hopefully making the good choices on behalf of our members to make sure every item we put on shelf is meeting all our Members Mark requirements and delight our members every single day.
Yeah, and to add on to Maggie's point, it's really utilizing the whole fish, right? It's utilizing the whole program. So we're talking specifically today about our salmon, but there's a lot of different items that are made from salmon. So it's really utilizing that whole fish and understanding how we can get the most value out of it to pass along to our members, but it's still a very high quality regenerative product.
And I'll add one last thing. So when we walk the talk that we say, seafood in the United States is just so fragmented, right? There's a lot of distributors, wholesalers, processors. So forget about how we interact with our partners at the source. All this stuff comes into the United States and it goes through this whole distribution network. So you lose a lot of the traceability end of it. And I think the other part of the value chain for us is because, as Sam's Club, we clearly communicate to our suppliers what we mean by regeneration, what we mean by sustainability, that we're not just communicating to some company in some state here in the United States. Our partners around the world know exactly what we mean and what we expect of them. And they also share back with us what their expectation is from us. And I think that's really the other part of where our member wins, is because when we talk regeneration, when we talk sustainability, everyone in our supply chain knows exactly what we want, and they help to benefit not just us, but kind of the world in general, because ultimately, it's not just about how do we make it better for ourselves and our members, it's how do we make it better for the entire world? How do we leave this a better place for our children, our grandchildren, for the future? Not just about how we make, how we make it better for ourselves.
Yeah.
So,
I think you're exactly right. If members can lead by example, how do we also, because of the example we set, put pressure on your national brand suppliers that they can also follow suit, because Member Smart alone is not going to fix this, but we can lead and we can be a good influence.
My job is a lot more than just how do I put product into a club. It's how do we protect all these different resources out there to keep them around for many, many more years.
I think it's keeping the habitat. We talked a little bit about habitat, and like you said, with like global warming and things changing, throughout the earth itself, is making sure that there's always going to be a habitat for these seafood species, so that way we can benefit from them in both being able to sell to our members, but then also being able to know we can sell to our members in 10, 15, 20, 50 years.
And then another huge part is, let's talk about waste. Like every product we sell comes with packaging. Where does the packaging goes when you're done with it? So that's another huge area that we have to figure out. How do we turn every single Member Smart products packaging to 100% recyclable, so it doesn't all just go into landfill? And then lots of work in the people sector too. How do we continue to promote supplier diversity? How do we continue to promote, social equity? Those are the things that we're looking at every single day. What we understand is our members care deeply about their communities. When they think about sustainability, when they think about, companies doing good, the first thing they think about is, what are these companies, what are these brands doing to improve my communities, whether it's through, providing help through small businesses, or, disaster relief, or, maybe we need to send Dan and Jesse out to clean up the beaches. I don't know, right? Like, communities are very important, and we're definitely looking into every opportunity where Sam's Club should play and can play. We have 600 clubs around in the country. We touch on many different pockets of the country. What can we do? We interact with our members every single day. What's our role? How can we do? How can we put our regeneration hat on when we interact with all these communities? So it's all interconnected. Well, let's walk the club and let's talk about it. One of the first things you will see when you come shop with us in the salmon or seafood in general is that you will immediately notice that the gold shield emblem, that's what we call it. So we designed this gold shield or silver shield that you can also see in the club, is that we wanted to communicate in a very simple way and truthful way to kind of reassure the members that how we have done all the work to make sure our fresh and frozen seafood was done through rigorous sustainability vetting process. We want to make sure every seafood we source and we developed follow the most highest and most strict sustainability process.
So Maggie, when you think about it from a club standpoint, so let's rewind a little bit and how it used to come in. And so it used to come in, the associate would have to take it out of a box, put it into another package, a foam packaging that wasn't recyclable, wrap it, and the shelf life was minimal on that. So now to today, with this new packaging that you're showcasing here, it's easier for the operator. So if you think about what they have to do when it comes in, they literally take it out of a box and put it in the case. And the shelf life's better for our members. You talked about how this packaging, it's a clear packaging that the member can see all of the items that you mentioned. We as operators don't get to talk to every member, so telling that story is important. When you look at this packaging, you can see the entire quality.
Front and back.
Front, back, it's clear. Member knows exactly what they're getting when they pick up this packaging. So great for us from an operator standpoint. Simple, easy, efficient, and makes the life easier for the associate, and then easier to make sure we have the product out for the member. And that's what the member is most concerned about is, do you have the product available?
For Members Mark today, all Members Mark meets certain level of sustainable requirement. That's what we talked about, the silver and the gold. Gold is where we are the most proud of because there's no higher standard we can go after, but silver means that there's a little bit of a way that we can close that gap between now and 2025. Members Mark Seafood focuses on value, focuses on quality, focuses on regeneration. We want to make sure everything we do, everything we put out, hits on all three buckets.
Absolutely. My three things from an operator standpoint would be, one, you guys tell the story on the packaging, which is great for our members. Two, the ease in which the associate can get this right to the member. And then three, all of the packaging work has made this a better item and a longer lasting item for our members.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Thomas. I'm a supply chain professor at the University of Arkansas, and I have the privilege to be the executive director of the WISE program. And WISE stands for Women Impacting Supply Chain Excellence.
And hi, I'm Lauren Adams. I am the Director of Early Career Programs at Sam's Club.
Support from industry partners is incredibly important to universities, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's through student organizations, whether it's through projects, whatever it is. Supply chain is a field that's misunderstood in a lot of cases, and it offers so many different opportunities that by having industry partners come in and help educate students on all the different opportunities that are out there, that's a huge win for both the students. And then they also get to see a little bit about the culture and the people and the stuff at organizations and get them really excited to choose intentionally certain companies to go work for. And we've been amazed and so appreciative of the support of SAMS and the enthusiasm to help not only get engaged with WISE, but really plug in and give back to help invest in tomorrow's supply chain leaders.
And at SAMS, we have really valued strategic partnerships like WISE for two reasons. Not only can we hire some of the best and the brightest, but also we have a mission and a purpose to really become a regenerative company. So, there's an element of that in the supply chain itself, but also on the people side. If we can give back, drive, new skills, new experiences, new opportunities to students, that elevates their chance to gain a career, drive local economy, and then it becomes a very cyclical process where it can be, more than just talent and actually do something for the greater good.
All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about salmon. I got to tell you, the seafood in general and salmon, there's a lot of things that they talked about that I guess I hadn't thought about. But I think it's super cool to hear how intentional organizations are about the products that they're offering. And so I suggest you check out and learn a little bit more about Sam's Club from that standpoint. I would love to hear from you if you had something, whether it was something you learned from our friends at Walmart or the video with Sam's Club. that was specifically kind of insightful or something you hadn't thought about, if you want to share that in the chat, that's something that we can take back and tell our partners what really kind of resonated with you, especially as it pertains to supply chain sustainability. And I wanted to take a second and talk about a program. I mentioned it earlier in our session that ISCEA offers, and it's a certified sustainable supply chain professional. And in the past, ISCEA has been great to offer some scholarships for students for some of their certification programs, one of which is the Sustainable Supply Chain Professional Program. And I wanted to ask Halley, because I know she went through that process to become a Certified Sustainable Supply Chain Professional, or the CSSCP program. Can you tell the other students or anyone on here what that program was kind of like, what you learned through it, and stuff, is if what you would have liked to have known if somebody told you before you started?
Thanks for the opportunity. Well, for a little bit of background on me, I'm really passionate about supply chain sustainability, but you don't have to be knowledgeable in supply chains or sustainability to take this course. It definitely covers like all the basics for both of them. So what I learned through it was how to incorporate sustainability into every step of the supply chain, and also how the supply chain plays a role in helping us solve like really big global environmental and social issues. I remember that there was a focus on like how the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals worked into what supply chains need to be doing. And also a lot of the things that we were learning about in this course, they used like real life industry examples of companies that were doing it right to kind of paint a picture on how this should look. Yeah, I mean, going into it, I'd say just go into it with an open mind. There's so much to learn and absorb, and I'd recommend it to anyone. It was a really positive experience.
And that's a great way to add something on your resume that says, I'm really interested in supply chain sustainability, because sometimes I know that's a challenge. Students say, I have a passion, but maybe my internship didn't cover this specifically or something. How can I build my resume to highlight that about myself? And I think using a certification program like CSSCP, that's a great way to do that. And so I think we're gonna head into our final speaker of the day. Halley, you wanna do the introduction?
Yeah, I'd love to. So Sheri Hinish is known as the supply chain queen, and she is the global sustainability lead for IBM's consulting services. And she's also the host of a podcast I love and I'm a big fan of. It's called The Supply Chain Revolution. Sheri, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. I might not sound very enthusiastic because I was on my way to London. I just landed a couple hours ago, and I think I've picked up a cold. So I sound like a 13-year-old boy going through puberty. You have to forgive me.
We'll take you however you are, Sheri. And I was going to tell everybody, I'm going to put Sheri's website and stuff in the chat. So look for that as a way you can follow and connect with her, and follow her on LinkedIn as well.
Thank you. So I have been listening in the background, and as Halley knows, I like to probe and diverge and get a bit provocative. And there were a couple of things that stood out just listening to some of the content that was presented today. So the first prompt is, it's really up to you, the folks on this call right now. We have failed you as leaders, and we have designed a lot of complexity and risk and all of the impacts related to environmental social governance, the way that we view cost optimization over value creation and being net positive. We have created this world. And I always like to go back to something when I was in black belt training. I come from a supply chain background. So in my heart, I know that this is where sustainability really becomes real, where it's operationalized. And this is what I took from my black belt training, that every system is perfectly designed to get the results that it gets. So everything that you're seeing right now, we've designed it to operate this way. Another cool prompt that stuck with me over the years is that without data and technology and really getting clear on Deming's cycle of plan, do, check, act, we have a hard time going back and checking the commitments and the ambitions and the, you know, the things that people say related to sustainability and impact. Without it being checked, without that sort of ground truth, and really getting clear on exactly what's happening in your supply chain, if left alone, it will operate like a complete psychopath. Now, we heard about responsible sourcing. I have a point of view on that as well, which we can dig into, and I'd love to share some of the work that we're doing, which someone said, I think, I forget her name earlier, the power of technology, the power also of tri-sector partnerships. So I think Marco mentioned that businesses can't succeed in societies that are failing. So when you think about how do we make this wicked ambition of realizing the 17 SDGs in the next 8 years, it's going to take thinking global, but getting hyper local. And that shows up in a lot of strategy. It shows up in starting at the community level, where a lot of really cool projects grow legs. There's a policy component, but we can't rely on that either because it's latent and lagging. There's also you know, this promise. You see a lot of folks rushing in around net zero transition, around being net positive and changing the value and the framework on which we base performance and what great looks like. So again, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I've been in supply chain for 2 decades. And when I was growing up, it was all about cost optimization. It was all about reducing touches, cycle time, like very classic levers that I think we're all very comfortable with. But when you start to talk about sustainability, that continuum changes. And I'll give you an example. Typically in my line of work, I see all the way at the far left, due diligence and compliance. And you'll see a lot of this with something called ESG reporting or non-financial performance disclosure. That's a subset of sustainability. That's the performance management of sustainability. So you'll have due diligence and compliance, and then you'll have optimization, which is I think where we live in supply chain operations, manufacturing, blah, 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 integrated business process optimization. And those value levers are very clear. Decarbonization, lean and green facilities and factories, like we know this. Material utility, there's an element of circularity there too. But then there's this transformation lens. And transformation lens means, what can I do outside of my 4 walls? So beyond scope 1 and 2 emissions, for example, getting to the heart of what's really happening around social responsibility beyond tier 1 or tier 2 in your supply chain. 95 of the companies that I've worked with, and these are big brands, 95%, they really don't know what's going on beyond tier 2. And that's the reality. It's like a, So when you think about this transformation lens, I think this is really, at least for the first time in my career, where I'm seeing the power of digitalization, modernization, and sustainability come together. There's a lot of research. If you reach out to me on LinkedIn, some of it I've posted in my published assets at the bottom of my LinkedIn page. This is free research. It's the latest and greatest that we've done at Institute for Business Value. We know now that there's a clear correlation between actually realizing a lot of the value levers. So this is revenue, growth, in EBITDA, market share increase over the past 3 years with the top brands that we've analyzed, over 3,000 brands. And this is even during the COVID pandemic. And you might scratch your head and say, well, why? Why does that happen? It's because you're not just looking at this myopic view of what value is, which is, you know, winning at all costs. So transformation, we had due diligence, compliance, optimization, transformation, really getting clear on ecosystem partnerships, decision orchestration. So all of the things that guide your company as a North Star and your sustainability strategy, You want to make sure you bring others along with you. And by the way, that's tough for a lot of people because they use their data as competitive advantage. They use their partnerships and their networks. I mean, Martin Christopher said, one of my all-time favorite thought leaders in supply chain, that eventually this will become the battle of supply chains in the end. I hope that we can sort of all win together, you know, leaning into like prisoner's dilemma and game theory, like if we cooperate, we all win. But the reason I want to bring this up is because the next, on this continuum, it's the next 3 stages that we aren't even scratching the surface. So innovation, real innovation, talking about circularity. How do we make it real? How do we start taking a system design lens and pulsing things and truly designing them the way that they should have been designed back in 1984? And then beyond that, okay, so let's just say for giggles, you've done all these things. This is a lot of the work that I do every day while I'm in London right now. Does that get the consumer or your target customer closer to trusting you and picking you and believing that you do what you say you do? Here's the thing, Consumer Goods Farm, they put out tons of research, incredible research. 250 of the top CPG brands in the world disclose against open frameworks and standards for ESG performance, thick disclosure reports. I've read a lot of them. Does that get me any closer to trusting them? Doesn't. How many of us, and you can use your reaction, how many of us actually read those big reports? I'm just gonna put a reaction. Oh, we don't have a thumbs down, do we? I'm putting a thumbs down. I don't read those reports. I wouldn't read them like in my spare time when I'm at the shelf and I want to buy a product. So when you think about that continuum, moving beyond innovation, it's experience. That's the next layer. How do you take a supply chain and connect the first kilometer to the last mile? And how do you use those signals? And we call them first party signals. So someone mentioned in Walmart with their sustainable fishing, which I have a point of view on, but I'm not going to bring it up here because it's too provocative. How do you get closer to the source of truth? It's that simple. So using geospatial, using, you know, advanced AI, using dynamic edge sensing, using robotics, using signals from the actual person in the supply chain who's responsible and creating that conduit for financing, for a lot of really cool things, incentives. That's what this is about. It's about experience. And you're bringing the customer along in that journey with you. So sustainability at the shelf, for example, where you can scan a QR code. Now I know things come out of boxes. I'm not going to use the B word, the blockchain word, but in general, there's a way, and there's several use cases, projects that I've worked on. It's really, really cool, where you connect the customer and the smallholder, for example, specifically in responsible sourcing of commodities or cocoa, palm oil, lots of really cool things. You can actually tip or thank your farmer, for example. You can donate in-app and crowdsource toward a sustainable development goal specific to that community. And then what's after that? What's after that experience lens? You can use those signals to rethink your networks. You can fold your supply chain in half. You can get to direct to consumer models. You can do a lot of really, really cool things where you're fundamentally rethinking all of the things that we operate right now and as business as usual. And then the last lens is really trust. And that's what we're after. We're after a very human experience in how humans are actually consumers of environmental services, where we truly understand that we're here on borrowed time and this is really not our land to claim, and that we have a way of understanding through decision orchestration, and that's a term that I use a lot, what the exact impacts are of our purchasing. And it does, and you can overlay this sort of orchestration in mega supply chain processes. Source to pay is one of the most common integrated processes that I use in my line of work. So getting really clear with every stakeholder, and it's a big process, by the way. It touches a lot of folks. Exactly what are you after? So I heard a lot about data, insights, science-based targets. I think Marco and Joe were talking about that earlier. All of these things are very important. What you'll find, though, is, at least based on the latest research that we've done at IBV, which is like the research arm of IBM, there's only about 14% of companies that are really doing it well. So there's a lot of opportunity. I think, you know, when I say what's the big bet at IBM, obviously data automation, even before you get to that point, data aggregation, data cleansing. This is not the type of data play that's like you just get within your four walls. You literally, I mean, it's wicked. There's a lot of folks involved. And the good news is it's possible, and it's being done with some really, really cool projects. Even in circularity, the work that we do with the plastic bank, you know, using social plastic. So collectors, you know, are able to earn a living, a fair living wage, collecting plastic that's in our waterways, in our oceans, on our beaches. And they're able to actually exchange that for not only educational tokens, but payment. And this plastic, I can name Hinkle is one of the #1 customers for the plastic bank. In fact, their Dial brand is exclusively made of social plastic. If you don't know that, support that brand. We have a real opportunity to lead with our pocket. And also someone else mentioned, like, where does sustainability sit in an organization? Like, how do you see yourself in that role? Get started. It's all of our responsibility. It's good for business. It's good for the planet. We could talk about the business case if you want to talk about that. I'd love to hear what you all are interested in discussing, but you have to get started now, and you have to really lean in, and it's tough. This is a tough line of work, but it is so, so rewarding. And the other thing I just want to mention, I lead the global practice for sustainability services and alliances at IBM. And my team looks very different from other teams, even our competitors. There are more Gretas and more Elizabeth is, and less Bill Gates. So I have 85% representation on my team of women and underrepresented folks in STEM communities. And what you find is that power of diversity. It is unparalleled. We need cognitive diversity to solve these types of problems. And when you think about all the communities that are touched and often hit first and worst from climate change, our solutions need to represent that tapestry of people. It cannot be single-noted. So I'll pause there. I do have some things that I could talk about, Stephanie, but I'm most interested in hearing, like, what are the lingering questions from the folks that have been attending this session?
If you guys want to put some questions in there, because I haven't seen any come up real quick, but Sheri, I was going to ask, because you've touched on a few as you've talked about leading with your wallet and stuff, and I think at some point in time, as a lot of these are students, maybe they're not in the workforce yet or whatever, and they want to do something. Can you talk a little bit more about, one, companies or organizations that you think are doing well that would be good brands to support, or two, where can they find information besides the big, thick binders of sustainability reports and whatever? Do you have suggestions on resources that would equip them and arm them with information so that they can make more informed decisions?
Yeah, I do. You know, and you bring up a good point, Stephanie, that there's a premise that sustainability has to be more expensive and that there's a premium. And I know a lot of companies actually market that in their more sustainable product portfolio. what happens sometimes is those brands, they charge that premium and they exclude people who can really benefit. So my personal mantra is that sustainability and those options should not be more expensive. And that we have to do a better job of creating that sort of access where people, I don't know, Haley, maybe you listened to the episode with Yossi Sheffi at MIT. We got into a debate where he said he believes that human beings do not have the capacity to balance trade-off of basic needs. So for example, if it's Stephanie and I, and we both only have $1 to spend on food to feed our family, and we're at the shelf or we're at the market, the local market, and we are faced with this dilemma of choosing something that has that sort of ethical factor. I like ethical because you find that social sustainability actually weighs more heavily at the shelf, believe it or not, especially in certain categories around food, things that we feed our children, etc. But that if we only had $1 and we had to feed our family, would we choose a product that is more sustainable, but we get less? Or would we do the opposite? And that's called the value intention gap or the action value gap, if anyone wants to look it up. And we just released some research a couple of weeks ago, specifically on that, double clicking. Why do people defect at point of sale in consumption? So with that in mind, I remember when I was in school, I was broke. It was a lot of ramen, a lot of like, don't judge me, but Taco Bell back then.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, and it's like, how do you make sustainability accessible? I mean, that's really what I'm after. And I think, zero waste, someone mentioned it earlier, it makes sense. Like there are so many communities in India and Africa that are already leapfrogging because they don't have to get past this sustainable infrastructure. They're already able to jump straight into circularity and circular systems. The question about, where to get information, I think you've never had more information at your fingertips. Like if you're really curious, don't ask the machine for permission. Just start looking. In my career, I've used LinkedIn and specifically social platforms as a real enabler, and it's literally changed the course of my career. So if you look online, I mean, there are, Ethisphere, there are, I wouldn't say Forbes so much, but there are these most ethical companies. Just have a look, do some digging online. And if you see someone if you're in supply chain, if you want to look into sustainability, just look them up and send them a request on LinkedIn. Literally, it's that easy. Now, executives are busy, maybe they won't respond, but then also you can say, who are those secondary connections that this person has? Maybe these people report to them, and you'd be surprised. I hire people that reach out to me on LinkedIn. I have. I've been hired by people literally reaching out on LinkedIn. And I think the other thing is you have to be persistent. Like sustainability, you are going to see in your career, especially when you get into like tri-sector partnerships, so public-private community partnerships, and the work where you're literally on the ground. You cannot unsee the things that you see. And sometimes it's heartbreaking because you see that this really affects people's lives. When you get into some of the social sustainability aspects, and I'll give you an example. I won't name the companies, but I'm sure you know one of them in particular. When you say sustainability, this CPG company, it comes to mind. All right. And then one of their competitors. So they wanted to get really clear on responsible sourcing and for commodities. And we started with palm oil and building this like mega network of networks, platform of all platforms. It's open, that people can really, it can be a federated model where it can create that type of access. And what I want to share with you is, even as much emphasis and headcount and money and attention and intention that these brands spend in this space, they still have child labor. They still have forced labor. They still have casual labor deep in their supply chain. And it's interesting because you start to see, and especially when you work in, let's just say, sourcing and procurement, you may have hundreds of thousands of suppliers. You may have tens of thousands. You will not have time to go through every single supplier survey. And when I say survey, this is point in time. It's not dynamic. There's really no authenticity or verification chain of custody. It's divorced from your system of record. So any enterprise applications, it's literally a survey you push to your suppliers and you say, are you doing the right thing? Do you have children in child labor in your supply chain? 99% of people will say no. Okay, so that's literally your water level. You have to use other exponential tech, and there are ways to get around it, to just get an idea of where the hotspots are. Maybe you help people get to like 2% of their supply base by commodity or category. And you might say, well, that sounds intuitive. That's actually really hard right now, because we have a lot of investments in legacy systems. We have the digital divide, despite what most consultants and technologists will tell you. Most supply chains are not run on laptops. They're supported by a lot of manual work and paper and touches and stakeholders, and like, it's so complex. That's why I said when I opened that we really have to step back, and it's your job, everyone in this call, to rethink what's been designed and hand it to you, because it's ineffective and it's not working. You know, longer and slower does not mean sustainable. We need to really move toward shorter supply chains, again, super global, hyper local, and getting clear on the outcomes and the trade-offs. I think Marco mentioned that earlier. The Sustainable Development Goals are a great way to start, because a lot of that analysis that underpins those reinforcing loops, those negative loops, quantifying the trade-offs, it's already been done for you. It's also supported by ISO standards. So I hope that answered your question, Stephanie.
Yeah, no, that's great. I did have a question from Reed that came in, and you touched a little bit on this. So I think there's already some nuggets that could be taken away, but what is the most important advice you would give young sustainability professionals as we try to push our businesses towards sustainability initiatives?
Be relentless. Be relentless. It takes that. I think the other thing is, you really want to find an environment where you can thrive. And what I mean by that is the right employer matters, the right sponsorship, the right level of allyship. I specifically, like Stephanie, support a lot of initiatives around creating equitable workspaces and also inclusive workspaces. So you want an employer who is actually going to allow you to explore. It's one of the best things you can do right now in your career. You know, every 3 to 6 months, you're in another function, or you're learning and you're soaking up things, and you're actually able to choose your own adventure, and then have the courage. So be relentless in what you want and what you're after, and in the impact that you're after, but then also have the courage to step up and say when things aren't working, or if you want to take on a new challenge or go a new direction, have the courage to speak up and know your worth, and also know what you want your focus and impact to be.
And somebody else had asked earlier, how do you show on a resume what type of skills or whatever, without just saying like,
do people use those?
Well, they still do some around here. So
okay, so I'm not a good person.
But to your point, is a LinkedIn profile, is that where you share information or whatever? How I guess there's a question on, I'm trying to find roles like that maybe they're not the traditional ones that come to universities to hire. How do I communicate that's an interest or something that's important to me?
Absolutely. I am all about like making sure that you are part of the algorithms that underpin who you are when someone types your name in. So whether that's LinkedIn, I also like Instagram because I think there's more of an artistic bend. And when you think about sustainability, it's just as much about the arts as it is science. There's a very human element to the work that we lead and that we are after. So Instagram, LinkedIn. I've also had candidates that have applied and they didn't have sustainability experience, but they created a blog and they would take things that happened in the news, or they would take maybe it was work that they've done in their community or work that they volunteered for, and they just wrote a beautiful piece on what it was, why it mattered, how it impacted them, what were the benefits delivered, and then how they could apply that in their role.
Perfect. That's super helpful. Halley, did you have anything else you wanted to ask Sheri before we wrap up in our last couple minutes?
I was curious about circularity in the supply chain. And for people that aren't like up close and personal with supply chain, what are some of the exciting improvements you've seen over the past couple years related to that?
Yeah, so one of the most exciting things I'm interested in right now is the work that we're doing with Pixera Global. So if you haven't listened to the Supply Chain Revolution podcast, I've had Pixera on, I think 7 or 8 times, and it's incredible work. And it's all around creating business resilience through circular supply chain by creating community resilience. And it goes back to the same thread that when you start to see circularity work, it's a shorter supply chain, it's focused, there's more autonomy, there's less risk, there's more symbiosis, all of these terms that as you start to dig in and learn more, they'll make sense. But overall, there's more cooperation and collaboration, and that's easier when people are closer or physically, located closer to each other. It's like agglomeration, Stephanie. That's a supply chain term that we use for, skilled workforce or specific segment in an industry where they have that same pull and those same synergies. It's no different in circularity or circular supply chains.
Perfect. You good, Halley? Sheri, you got any final comments you'd like to leave the group with?
Lead us, build us a better world, everyone. Please, we need you. We need your brains. We need you now more than ever. And please reach out to me. I'm always looking for talent, and I'm always open to having a chat. Like Stephanie said, depending on where I am in the world, it might be a cup of tea or it might be a glass of wine, but just reach out.
Well, and Sheri, thank you so much for your time. And I see Marco and Joe are still on here. I appreciate you guys' time, and Hannah and the SAMS team putting together that information. So I hope that was helpful to everyone to give some things to think about, some ideas for how each of us can continue to make an impact. And I'm going to hand the floor over to Dr. Sarah. Thank you guys, everyone, for being here. If any of you are interested in doing the Certified Sustainable Supply Chain Professional Program, they are offering a discount. So reach out to me and I can give you that information.